I'm joined by Natalie from Whitcombe HR in Kent. So Small Business Saturday is very much about celebrating small independent businesses, and there is no right or wrong way to do this. So it could be through promotions, events, collaborations. So we've decided to do a Q&A today. So Natalie, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on the call.
Thank you. It would be really good to know a bit more about your background and your business.
So basically, I started the business 5 years ago. I've been doing HR since I left university. I even did it at university, to be fair. So it's been a thing that I've done all the time. And I was working for a business of 250 employees as their sole HR person. And I thought it would be nice to set up on my own and help small businesses in the area. So that's where it all started, really. And now I work with quite a few different clients in the southeast, basically, helping them with everything HR.
So what services do you provide?
We basically sell ourselves as like an internal HR manager that you only need a couple of days a month, maybe, or a couple of hours a month. It depends. But what we try and do is really learn about the business and know their employees and everything. So we're really focused on what they actually need from a HR point of view.
Thank you. And it would be good to know, what do you feel are the pertinent challenges at the moment that small businesses are experiencing from a HR perspective? Obviously, there's so much going on in the world, and indeed the last 2 years. So from an employer perspective, that's a lot for small businesses to cope with.
I think the main things are at the moment recruitment and retention. I think mainly because of Brexit, and then with COVID as well didn't help. But I think recruiting people has been quite a challenge for people, and keeping people retained also. Another thing as well is like the mental health side of things. Through COVID, I think a lot of people struggled with their mental health, and now we're getting that coming through as people are starting to go back into work and go back into the office and things like that.
And how do you see this changing next year?
Hopefully, from a recruitment point of view, we can start seeing a good flow of people getting back into employment. I think unemployment rates are quite high at the moment, so it'd be good to get people back in. And then from a mental health point of view, I think the support that we can give, I'm a trained counsellor now, so I think the support that people can give their employees is really key, and that's what I try and push with the people that I work with at the moment, to give those employees the support they need to get them back into work properly and get them back in doing what they love best, basically.
And what retention advice would you give small businesses?
I think a big one is giving the support to people. I think employees need that support, especially at the moment. I think looking at finances and seeing if you can up people's wages is important as well, with the cost of living crisis and everything. And I think having those two elements, showing your support and having the wages slightly increased, especially with national minimum wage going up in April, I think it'll be really important.
And what about from a recruitment perspective? What would be your top 2 or 3 tips?
I think it would be definitely the salary side of things, looking at whether you can offer some sort of cashback plans. You've got like things that we use, Westfield Health within Whitcombe HR, so people can get cashback on their healthcare and things, any healthcare plans. And I think looking at what sort of training you can give your employees and advertising that as part of a recruitment package would be helpful.
Thank you. And how have things changed since the pandemic? We know that working from home has and does continue to be extremely prominent. Are people going back into the office? And how are and how are employers dealing with it?
I think that's been quite a sticking point for some employers. I think a lot of employers were like, right, we're back in now, we can all get back to normal. But actually a lot of employees have found it quite beneficial having that bit of hybrid approach. So a lot of the clients I work with, we put in like a bit of a hybrid policy, so people could work from home, say 3 days a week, and then go into the office 2 days a week, just so you have those touch points with everyone in your in your teams, because it is important to have that connection too. Some clients I work with, they do put all working from home now. And that seems to work for them, and they sometimes offer like an office space if employees want to go, and then other ones, like a lot of the manufacturing clients, obviously they need them in the office, so that's where we've had to just be like, you've got to come back in, basically. And if we've had any pushback, it's more from a health point of view. A lot of people were worried about catching COVID, but now it seems to has been okay, not too bad. So the pushback isn't so bad.
Yes. And do you see this changing at all over the next year?
I think as the pandemic has drifted off a little bit, obviously we know it's still around. I think that's helped with people getting back into work, and I think that will just continue happening over the next year.
And how have businesses responded to rising costs? Have you seen businesses from a HR perspective, are they now really having to look at putting new policies in place and review their plans?
Unfortunately, for a lot of small businesses especially, the cost of living crisis has affected everybody, and even the cost of, like, for the manufacturing companies, the products that they're bringing in and making and things like that. So it's been something that everyone's been discussing and talking about.
And what would you say are the most important emerging issues from a HR perspective that businesses should really factor into their plans for next year? So if I was to say to choose your top three.
Yeah, I think retention would be one of them. Looking at retention strategies, how you can keep your employees, looking at the finances of the business and the national minimum wage increases, and how as a business you can make that possible. And that then leads into the cost of living crisis. How can you help your employees? Can we put in things like getting the discounted stores, those sorts of things, just anything that can help with helping the employees not spend so much, I guess.
Oh, well, thank you ever so much for your time. I'm sure we've all learned something today. And if anyone wants to connect with Natalie, then they can do that on LinkedIn by looking out for you. So that's Natalie Whitcombe, and your website is whitcombehr.co.uk. Is that right?
Yeah, that's perfect.